So I sent an email yesterday to the general manager regarding some concerns that I have about the Brown Act, and I also talked with our attorney, Jean, and since I've been on this board since January, there have been a couple of Brown Act concerns that have come up, which I've addressed with her, and I believe she's also addressed with the general manager. And in preparing for this meeting, another such incident has come up, different, but concerns me. Apparently, and I don't know if this is common practice for this board, but with regard to noticing the public, there's a 72-hour window after the board packet could be published, where if there are new materials that the district is going to be presenting at a meeting, or if, for example, today I'm going to be giving a presentation, if those materials come available in that 72-hour window, they need to be made public so that the public can review the materials in advance of the meeting. And I specifically asked to have those materials made available to the public and published on the district website, along with the packet which had already been published, and unusually quite far in advance for some unknown reason. So there are a number of PDF files that I received yesterday around 1:30 from the district, which we'll be looking at today. So they're the presentations we'll be seeing today regarding this workshop, as well as the presentation that I'm going to give that have not been made available to the public, but yet were made available to a majority of the board in advance of the meeting. And it's my understanding that, and this is also based on my conversation with Jean, that is not in keeping with the Brown Act, and that we need to make sure that that never happens again. So if there are materials that come up and are not available in time for the packet, that's okay, as long as we make those materials available to the public via the website, which is where people are looking for the materials. So to just present those materials to the public at the meeting is not enough. We need to make sure those materials are available when the board gets the materials, not just at the meeting. So I hope I'm clear about that, and I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. If anybody isn't clear about it, I'd like to know, and you could let me know later or whatever.
The couple of Brown Act concerns that you allude to, would you discuss those with us so we can get an idea of what the problem might be?
I'm not going to discuss those at this moment, but I will discuss them later.
Well, you bring up the problem of a Brown Act, which is a serious problem if in fact it's been violated, but you don't give us any information to go on or to rectify. One of the concerns of the Ralph M. Brown Act, the Public Meeting Notice Act, of which I'm somewhat familiar from years of service with the City of Daly City and here, you're given an opportunity to correct any misdeeds or misunderstandings you have in the situation. And if you don't share with us what those couple of areas of Brown Act concerns you have, we're not given an opportunity to correct them if in fact they are violations.
Well, I was told by Jean that they've been corrected.
But we're operating with you and Jean now, and Jean, you're referring to Jean Savory, who's the attorney of record for this district?
And I asked, that's right, and I asked for her to be here today so that she could talk about it, and you said no, that she could not be here today.
Right, I suggested she not come today. We traditionally do not have legal services here. We've been trying to cut back budget-wise on costs.
I understand.
And I suspect it would be probably a $2,000 cost to bring the attorney here, and I didn't see the need for it. And again, I am just, and I've explained this to you on the telephone, I am just one of 5 commissioners. And although I'm the president, I'm only here for ceremonial things and just to keep the ball rolling, so to speak, and housekeeping. You're always welcome to make a motion to change anything that I say or anything you disagree with. Mm-hmm. And I'll do the best I can to speak the mind of the commission as I think it's speaking. But if there's something you don't like, just bring a motion to the floor, get a second, pass it with a 3-2 majority, and we'll do it. I'm not the wisest person in the world, nor the brightest bulb in the box. but I just tell you, that's where I come from. Mr. Grinnell, can you respond to this Brown Act suggestion?
Well, again, not knowing precisely what the commissioner is referring to, it's a little difficult, but as a matter of fact, the Brown Act reference to making documentation available within a 72-hour period of a scheduled local body meeting. It's section 54957.5 A, B, C, and so on, particularly B1 and B2. And as a matter of fact, what's involved here are a couple of documents, documents that have been prepared and made available, that prepared by district staff for this meeting. This is, as you all know, yet another in many years sequence of annual strategic planning workshops. And staff did make those documents available. They are here for the public.
Available where?
Excuse me, please.
Available
I'm
where?
speaking. I would not like to be interrupted, if you please.
Please go on.
And the documents are available consistent with the Brown Act section I quoted. There is a second document, or documents as the case may be, prepared by Commissioner Brennan, and there has been, as a matter of fact, to my knowledge, 3 editions of this document, which she terms a presentation, which we have provided time for in today's agenda for her. The first time that document became to our attention was just before the February 20th Harbor Commission meeting. We became aware earlier that day that Ms. Brennan had placed a document about the 1991 Pillar Point Master Plan on her own personal Facebook page. She came to the Harbor Commission meeting on the 20th that night. There was an agenda item regarding that 91 plan presentation placed there at her request. She did not make known to either the board or staff what was on her Facebook page. We did make available presentation equipment for her. She then asked to postpone that presentation after all of those preparations. It was then placed on this agenda. Now, additionally, we became aware of a second edition of this presentation, which in fact is available to the public consistent with the Brown Act. And then as late as within the last 36 hours, we were told by Commissioner Brennan via email that there was a third edition of this thing. In each case, she asked us to make copies available to the public. The second edition, which is here, is 60 pages long, and we are available to make that to the public by email at no cost to them if they sign up and let us know. We felt it was prohibitive to make many copies for this agenda session at 60 pages each, 25 cents a page. That seemed prohibitive. So in any case, we have tried to accommodate Commissioner Brennan and her presentation, but we keep getting new instructions and so on. So in fact, we have complied with the Brown Act as far as I can see, and we will certainly make every effort to continue to do so in the future.
Let me ask you this. Based on your, I assume from Commissioner Brennan that you talked with the attorney? Our attorney represents us on this issue.
I have briefly on the phone and also a couple of emails.
Is it your opinion that we're in any violation of Brown Act?
No, we are not.
All Any commissioner comments?
I have comments.
Please.
So when I talked to our attorney yesterday, she did say that I was correct in expecting that the documents be made available on the district's website, because it's our practice to make public information available on the website, so the public would expect to find it in that location. And to not do that is skirting the Brown Act. So you can interpret it various ways, but because we have a policy here of making our board packets and our information, our public information, available on the website, the expectation that that information be placed there, it is in keeping with the Brown Act. And to not do that is basically to keep the information from the public, which is what happened. And when you provide the public, let's just put it this way, when you provide the commission with presentations that are produced by the district, and there were 3 of those that were received yesterday at 1:30 for the first time to the majority of the board, and you don't allow the public to review those documents in advance of the meeting, number one, people will not come to the meeting because they don't know what the meeting's about. Number two, they're not going to be able to come to the meeting as prepared as they might otherwise. And number three, it is not in keeping with the Brown Act. So we need to make sure that we're making information available to the public and be as transparent a district as possible. So that's what I'm asking for. As far as the issues that you're discussing regarding the presentation that I put together, I gave you a link. You received that link from me several times. There was absolutely no problem with downloading from that link, so I don't know what your problem was downloading from the link. The link worked fine. You've got a draft version here that you printed. You didn't print the version that I asked to have printed. And I didn't ask so much to have it printed. I asked to have it put on the website specifically and repeatedly, and I was denied that, and the public then was denied the opportunity to review the information in advance of the meeting. So those are the concerns that I have.
All right, thank you. We have 2 speaker comments here. Bill Kehoe. Right there is good, Bill.
Okay. Before this discussion ensued, I just really wanted to say, I hope this is only one of many meetings, and I would like to make a request. I got an email from a fellow Meeeting Community Council member, Dan Haggerty, saying that this time on a weekday, when most people are working, leaves people like myself out from being able to come in this. So hopefully there'll be a series of meetings, and I'd like to suggest that maybe one in the evening and one on a weekend to provide people that have to drive over the hill an opportunity to come in and look at that. As long as I have a couple seconds left, on the discussion that was just going on, I'd like to add a couple of points of clarification because we've gotten into this situation when I was chair. The thing is that when a document becomes available to board members, it's supposed to become available to the public, but there is a corner case within the Brown Act that says as long as enough copies are brought to the meeting, then that sort of gets around the letter of the law. But it certainly breaks the spirit of the law in the fact that the community doesn't have time to review it, so they're caught by complete surprise. But the real point I want to make is, because it was a public comment by Sabrina, the board is not supposed to discuss it until it's agendized for the next meeting. That is definitely in the Brown Act.
I'm sorry, say that again.
If a comment is brought up during public discussion, board members are not supposed to comment on that because it's not agendized.
That's correct.
And then it has to be brought back as an agenda item, and then the public as well as the other commissioners to weigh in on it. So the kind of conversation that was going on here, I didn't want to interrupt it, but in future, you should kind of be careful.
That's a very good point. Thank you.
But forget all that. More meetings at better times for community members to come here. Business hours for most people just doesn't work.
Good point. And all I would say about that is I think the intent of the individuals who spoke were a sincere intent.
Oh yeah, no.
Not an intent to deceive or delay or obfuscate. Great, thank you.
I'm not a letter of warning when it comes to these things.
Yes, thank you. Brenda Hattery. Did I say that right, Hattery?
Yeah, Brenda Hattery. Hattery with H. Thank you for letting me make public comment. I'm really glad to be here today. Like this gentleman just said, there are a lot of people that would like to be here today, but they're at work. I'm a recreational voter, And several of the recreational boaters that keep their boats here at Taylor Point Harbor or elsewhere and enjoy the harbor asked me to come and ask you to have a public meeting, one or more, regarding the issues that are on this agenda in the evenings, on the weekends, at times that they can attend. There are a lot of people that are very excited about this harbor, find it a lovely place, would really like to see every improvement be something that the community is part of and that the community is proud of. And right now, when the information isn't being broadly dispersed through multiple public meetings or on the website or however it may be, it's hard for the community to buy in. And so please take that really seriously and have a series of meetings and do as much as you can. I believe that it will return so much to you in input from the public and in positive reinforcement for the things that you want to do, that you will really value that input.
Thank you. Under new business, item number 1, bills and claims in the amount of $70,059.63. Mr. Treasurer?
I reviewed the bills and claims and found them to be in order, except for one minor correction that I could have Ms. Frederick discuss. And once she discusses that, I would recommend approval.
There was a 6 cents difference between an invoice and the amount that we put on the report.
Point of order, Mr. President, if I could, through the chair, ask you to speak a little louder so we can all hear.
Sure. There was a 6 cents difference on one of the invoices from what was recorded on the report, and that's since been corrected.
Is that a motion to approve?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to approve item number 1. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracchi? Commissioner Terrabonne?
Aye.
President Tucker?
Aye. So ordered. Item number 2, bills and claims in the amount of a blanket $500,000 to cover payment of bills and claims from March 7th, 2013 to March 20th, 2013. Mr. Treasurer?
I'm going to actually hand this over to Ms. Frederick.
Yes.
To explain this.
Okay. This is actually an item that is on the agenda, sort of as a contingency, in case we're unable to obtain a quorum for the March 20th meeting. Essentially, what it would allow us to do is get approval from the board in advance to pay our bills and claims rather than holding them, getting your approval on the 20th and then putting all the checks.
And this is something we do historically when we come up against holidays where we're going to miss a couple of meetings so that our bills get paid on time. Any questions? Is there a motion?
I move that we approve item 2, bills and claims in the amount of $500,000 to cover payment and bills and claims from March 7th to March 20th, 2013. I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded on the question. Hearing none, the clerk call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracchi? Commissioner Terrabonne?
Aye.
President Tucker?
Aye, so ordered. Item number 3 is committee assignments. To include Commissioner Brennan, we've rearranged the committee assignments. Please take them with you. If you have some concerns or wish some changes, let me know, and I'll be pleased to work that out.
Can we discuss that?
Sure, well, of course we can.
Okay. Where is that? Oh, I have a copy of it.
Was it not in your packet?
No. Here, I'll share it. So, one of the things we talked about when I was at my training, so this was a special district training on ethics, was that when you have ad hoc committees, they really need to be ad hoc committees. Otherwise, you should really move them to standing committees because standing committees are noticed to the public. And so I'm a little, interested in reviewing these to see if maybe we should move some of the ad hoc committees to standing committees, especially something like promotion and marketing, if we're going to consider including the website in there, and that's not something that we've discussed yet, but I think we need to have a committee to deal with the website. I would suggest that we move that to a standing committee so that it's properly noticed. I'm just looking here, this list. The Administrative Office Committee, I think we should also move to a standing committee so that it's publicly noticed and the public can be present during those meetings. The Harbor Environment Committee, I definitely would like to make sure that those meetings are publicly noticed, and I think we could move that to a standing committee also. The Perch Beach Committee, I'd like to see that as a standing committee. The Coastal Trail, I'd like to see as a standing committee. I don't see why, I don't see why all of these aren't standing committees. So I'd like to discuss that.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, what is your pleasure?
I move that we change them to standing committees.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded on the question to move all the committees to standing committees? Okay. Any comment? Staff has a comment?
Yes, there are definitions of what standing committees are and ad hoc committees are, and I would suggest that the commission, before acting, consider the purpose of the two kinds of committees. It has been practice for certainly as long as I've been here that committees do not meet on a regular basis, which is what standing committees are for. I think from Commissioner Brennan's statement, her concern is having notice so the public is aware and can attend such committees. And there's an alternative to simply making every committee a standing committee. The board could also, for a committee's subject, if it's deemed of sufficient, interest, public, the board can always enable a notice to be published and the public notified without automatically making every committee standing. So it's just something for you to think about.
I just want to share my thoughts on this. In the interest of government transparency, I don't mind pushing all of these to be standing so that at any time if there's a meeting, it's noticed. I don't have a problem with that. The only thing that I can think of that could be maybe a challenge for staff is this could be a little laborious in terms of if we all had if it gets really busy and we had like 9 meetings all at once, and just coordinating them and then noticing them, that can be quite a crazy scheduling scenario. So that's my only thing. However, I do support any meeting that we have here be transparent and open to the public. I don't have a problem with that. I just want us to think about how maybe we will execute this in a very practical manner without driving staff and everybody else kind of crazy. That's my concern.
I have something.
Let me ask you this. Rather than make them standing committees, could we publicize the meeting of the ad hoc committees on the web?
Well, sure. You can put them on the web. You can publicize them any way you want. There's no regulation that concerns that. The one other thing, by automatically providing for public presence, you do give up the potential for a 2-member committee to discuss matters that otherwise might be with a full board in closed session. I'm thinking of anything to do with real estate in particular, and you would be basically giving up your freedom of discussion activity with something. I could see whereby And I'm not thinking of anything in particular here, but I could foresee where an ad hoc committee on subject X might come back to the full commission and say, we think that the board would be well advised to schedule a closed session of the full board to deal with that particular aspect. Now, that does not eliminate the potential for public involvement and presence, but there are certain things by law which bodies such as yourselves are allowed to do without a public presence, and you should think about that.
Commissioner?
I think that your point about us having so many committees becoming unwieldy is a good point, and I'm also wondering if maybe we should consolidate down some of these committees, because frankly, I haven't heard of anybody meeting for any committees at all. So, you know, I don't think it's really happening, and probably because we have a bunch of kind of random committees, and maybe we need to think about narrowing it down to maybe 3 or 4, and we could kind of group some of these things together and then actually have meetings. And I'd like to see the board working on some of these issues, and I think if we had more active committees and more public input, that would be very useful. So in order to make that happen, the public's got to be invited, and if the committees are having a phone conversation and calling it a committee meeting, it's not available for public input. And so we're missing out on some important information from the community that might be relevant. So I'm just trying to figure out a way where we can have the public involved. And, you know, I don't think we necessarily need to have 9 committees.
Any further comment on the motion to make these all standing committees?
Well,
Certainly.
Just one more thought, that triggered, actually, what Commissioner Brennan said triggered something in my mind. I think an underlying question in this is, at what point do we bring the public into the meetings? I mean, that's kind of an underlying question is, you know, do you want to bring the, I mean, again, I'm not really, I could go either way on it, because in the interest of, again, government transparency, I could see bringing the community in early on and having these discussions. I could see the community coming in during public comment when it's brought to the full board. I mean, all those scenarios are fine with me. Again, it's more of, I look at the practicality of this and just how we can do all of this without driving staff and everybody else crazy in the process. That's kind of where I'm coming from. Just practical, that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you.
So I see some committees that could be combined. Could we talk about combining some committees?
Well, there's a motion on the floor that deals with making them all standing committees right now, and it's been seconded. We need to move on with the agenda, but let's take a vote on this and see where that goes.
I think this
And
is
then
pretty important.
And then if you wish to speak a little bit further on, or offer another motion, you're certainly welcome to do that.
Okay, so we can make
Will
all
the
the
clerk
committees.
call the roll, please?
Can I get one point of clarification?
Certainly.
Okay, so what we're voting on is to make all the committees standing committees, but we're not voting to necessarily keep all these committees as standing committees, but that we are making them. We are making committees standing committees.
You made the motion.
Got it,
And your
okay.
motion was, and correct me if I'm wrong, was to make all these committees standing committees, and it was seconded by Commissioner Bernardo. Am I correct on that?
My intention was to make our committees standing committees. So can I just make that clarification?
Can you read back the motion, please?
Brennan said that she wanted more standing meetings instead of ad hoc. She went through the list and then stated that she'd like all of them to be standing committees, not ad hoc.
And that's the motion that's been duly seconded, and that's the motion that we're going to vote on now.
All right.
Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Pedretti? Commissioner Caravano?
No.
President Tucker?
No. The motion fails for lack of a majority. Now you want to discuss something else?
Can I make another motion?
Sure.
Okay. So I move that we make our ad hoc committees standing committees, but not necessarily these committees.
No, you were in the minority in the voting, and the vote failed, and that you can't modify it to that. You're saying the same motion over again, and that won't fly.
Okay, let me think about it. I move that we consolidate some of these committees.
Can you tell us what committees you'd like to consolidate? Brenda? Excuse me, Brenda?
Yes, sir.
Well, while the commissioner is looking over what she wants to consolidate, you have item number 4 here. That speaks to our strategic planning.
Yeah, it does, and I had some confusion.
Okay, well, what I wanted to say was that we're going to allow public comment as staff makes its presentation, and then it'll be opened up. So I didn't want you to be confused and wonder when you're going to get to speak.
Okay, and then one other question.
Sure.
I thought that was it. This budget,
Yes,
when is that being discussed?
It's not really a budget.
I'm sorry?
That's just not really a budget. It's kind of clarifying one of the other slides to kind of make it easy to follow along. It's not part of the budget process.
It's part of the slide
So
presentation.
it'll get in there. and
Yes.
then- Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I move that we combine Oyster Point Marina Ferry Service and Oyster Point Marina Development into one committee.
Would you make that a motion, please?
I did.
Would you make that a motion, please?
I said I moved.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, you did.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Oyster Point Marina combined with the ferry service and the development. And that would be items 6 and 7. Is there a second to the motion?
Yes.
Motion made and seconded. On the question? I'd like to say that I think the ferry service is distinctly different from development. There are 3 or maybe 4 parcels of commercial property there that the city of South San Francisco in the past has indicated may let us develop. If we could develop a plan, they would work with us. I think that takes a different expertise, if you will, than the ferry service, which is an ongoing process that needs to be built up from a public relations standpoint. So I don't see that I could support this particular motion, although I do see that there's a possibility of consolidating some of these ad hoc committees together. But that's just my thoughts. Comments, questions from the commission?
I do. Okay, I understand the consolidation idea, and I like the consolidation idea. I just think we need to think about it more, because here's where I'm coming from. If we're going to be consolidating ferry and development, what is the difference, and this is a hypothetical question, what is the difference between that and just the Oyster Point liaison? I mean, I guess I'm confused maybe by the headers and what the responsibilities are, because they're not listed out here, but I think that it just brings up a lot of questions for me in terms of natural pairings, and I do agree with President Tucker that ferry service and development, while there are interdependencies there, I think these are 2 very different animals to tackle. So, yeah, I think that it has to be, I have to think about the reconfiguration of some of these a little bit more before supporting that particular parent.
So, yeah, I can see where it could get complicated, but I also think that since we're not actually having committee meetings, we really need to think about, realistically, how many meetings we're all going to be willing to take on. And, there's a certain level of responsibility with having these committee meetings. If it's just going to be a list and it doesn't actually mean anything, we're not actually going to have any committee meetings, then it's not really serving a useful purpose. So I'm concerned about that.
One more
Please.
Thomas. May I suggest that, because I think that this is a much deeper discussion, that we think about this a little bit more and then put this on the next agenda for fuller discussion, because I really want to give this the appropriate time that it needs to fully cook some of these ideas. If you all agree to that, I do want to revisit this though, just to make it more practical.
So I would, if we could agree to that, I would rescind my motion.
You can only rescind your motion if the second withdraws his second, and then you can take it off the table.
Okay, well, whatever.
You want to withdraw your second?
Yeah. Yes.
So with the permission of your second, you can
Yeah.
withdraw the motion.
Yeah, and I agree that we should put it on a regular agenda.
And you're withdrawing the motion?
Yeah,
Okay, then the motion's been withdrawn, and this will appear on a future agenda for further discussion.
great.
I had hoped to get into strategic planning, but let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll do strategic planning. No, Sunday the family's coming over, so we'll do something.
So kids coming in from out of town at all, or?
No, no, no.
What's amazing is you could actually stream the season to the show without
Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, strategic planning, finance, and priorities workshop. Mr. Grinnell, you want to start us?
Yes, I'd be happy to, Mr. President. This is the 2013 Strategic Planning, Finance, and Priorities Workshop. It is the latest in a string of similar workshops that the Harbor Commissions over the years have held on an annual basis in public session to consider its overall goals and priorities, to assess its financial condition, and to formulate and update its long-term strategy and implementation measures, both for the immediate future, meaning the next fiscal year, which in this case is fiscal 2013-14, and the longer term with a kind of a 5-year takeout, at least to begin that process. What we will be doing today, as we have in the past, even though we're almost an hour late starting, is, as the agenda shows, which is available over there for those who don't have it in front of them, we will be updating the district's strategic planning process and intended workshop outcomes today, progress in district goals and objectives achievements, and then moving on to a detailed review of our fiscal situation, status and goals and projections, and then a new section of the workshop for this year will give a more in-depth consideration to our capital and maintenance facilities projects, both an update and projections, for both harbors, Oyster Point Marina Park and Pillar Point Harbor. We will then typically have time for extended public questions and comments. This year, we will have a brief presentation at her request by Commissioner Brennan regarding the Pillar Point 1991 Master Plan. After that, we will have public comment, and then a break for lunch. The afternoon session will consist of a status report on district priorities achievement over the past year, ending with the commission considering updating those priorities. And so that's what's ahead of us. I'll start with a brief overview of our planning process and intended workshop outcomes. What we hope to come out of this afternoon at the end of the day are the following. Number one, updated action priorities for fiscal year 2013 and 14, What that means for those of you who follow Harbor District Board meetings and presentations, the general manager's reports, which are provided in every board meeting, are arranged by the priorities that were set in the previous year's workshop. So that gives you a sense of what we're getting at. We will also hope to update our capital improvement strategy, both for next year and over the next 5 years. What we're talking about there, of course, is what are the major facilities projects that we need to address. The topmost priority is maintaining our existing facilities, docks, piers, and so on, other fixed assets. But then looking ahead over the next several years, and this would be for both harbors. Third, we're hoping to have updated guidance for increasing and diversifying the district's revenue base. We cannot assume that we can cover all of our expenses and new financial needs simply from rates and fees. So we need to continue our efforts to both enlarge our revenue stream, but also to diversify it through compatible uses and activities. We also hope to get guidance today on, as we always do, for continued cost control and operational efficiency in carrying out the district's operations. Lastly, updated guidance for enhanced and effective communication with and from the public. We've heard some comments from the public today. We will take those into consideration. And I will just comment at this point, the concern that this workshop, which happens one day a year, has been and is today, during the day when a lot of people cannot attend. It's several hours long. If we started at a regular 7 p.m. time of a regular board meeting, we'd be ending somewhere around 1 or 2 in the morning. That doesn't seem to be reasonable, so we would have to consider alternatives, which may be a weekend meeting, one day a year, who knows. Anyway, things to think about. Now, the district does have strategic goals. We are not simply doing piecemeal planning here. And the goals that are currently in place, again, subject to review and consideration, are these. One is, of course, to maintain and improve the harbor's facilities, Harbor District's facilities at Oyster Point and Pillar Point. A second one is to continue to reduce outstanding debt. FYI, we're on schedule to retire our complete $8.1 million outstanding balance to the State Boating and Waterways Department by the year 2018. We, again, have the goal to increase and diversify the revenue base at both harbors. Fourth, sustain the fishing industry at Pillar Point Harbor. Fifth, to accommodate to extent feasible increasing visitations to Pillar Point. We, for example, have recently adopted a new events policy as one step to address the increasing interest that the public has in coming in particular to Pillar Point as well as Oyster Point. Two more, we need to adapt and respond to impacts of new ferry service at Oyster Point. The ferry service is now in operation, and over time we anticipate there will be more impacts yet to be felt. And then lastly, to play a constructively and mutually advantageous role in South San Francisco's long-term development plans for Oyster Point Marina. As you all know, redevelopment agencies have been eliminated by the state, and so the city of South San Francisco is basically reconsidering how it intends to proceed over the long term to deal with the asset of its Oyster Point Marina, which the Harbor District operates for them. Lastly, as an overall goal, maximize the value and utility of both harbors for the boating public, county residents and taxpayers, their local communities and visitors. Okay. So those are the overall goals that are driving the district's activities these days, which can be considered today. The district strategic planning workshop process is based on an approach that you can call adaptive planning. Basically, what that means, without getting into a bunch of jargon, is to enable the Board of Harbor Commissioners to maintain a flexible approach to its planning and implementation decisions within the framework of the strategic goals I enumerated, and to enable the district to adjust its goals and objectives and its priorities in response to changing needs and circumstances. And if you look historically, that has occurred as financial conditions have changed, as physical conditions have changed, and as various considerations of different activities have been brought forward as important. And again, an example, updating Pillar Point 1991 Master Plan objectives. In one of the handouts, you will see a detailed updated review of the 11 1991 plan objectives for Pillar Point. Some of these have been achieved, some have been modified over time by Harbor Commissions past, some are still being worked on, some have been discarded based on the annual planning reviews through the workshops. I will quickly give you a summary update on achieving district goals and objectives before turning over the chair to Finance Director Frederick to provide the financial presentation. Achievement, district debt. As I mentioned, our original debt was in the vicinity of about $19.7 million. It's been reduced by annual payments to the state of principal and interest. We are now down to a balance of $8.1 million with full retirement scheduled for around 2018, approximately 1 year earlier than scheduled. Second, facilities maintenance, repair, and improvements at both harbors. Several projects, as many of you are aware, are now in different stages of implementation at both harbors, including dock repair and rebuilding, boat launch ramp, resurfacing, pier repairs, and other structures and public access. Our Clean Marina program is making significant progress at both harbors. This month, the body that provides certification for harbor Clean Marina programs will be making a full program audit of our program at both Pillar Point and Oyster Point. And again, hats off to the Harbor Patrol in both facilities for their efforts. We anticipate being certified with a Clean Marina program. This is a major step forward. Fishing industry. The Johnson Pier repairs and cleanup process is underway. We have, starting last year, enabled use of salmon smoke acclimation pens. We anticipate that that process will continue. We are planning to try to provide more space and facilities for commercial fishermen on shore. As everyone knows, Pillar Point is short of space, and we're doing what we can about that. That's an ongoing activity. Revenue base, we do have a couple of new leaseholds at both harbors, but we will be continuing our efforts along that line. That's an ongoing effort. Ferry service, again, we're aware that it's operating. The San Francisco Ferry, which is by another name the Water Emergency Transportation Authority, has now been meeting with water transit advocates on potential service improvements to expand ridership. The WETA has been in touch with the Harbor District concerning possible cooperation on on-site operational needs. Visited harbors, I mentioned that we have taken a major step late last year to adopt a new events policy, which is in place. Dredging and shoreline erosion. Projects and planning are underway to address our immediate needs. This is basically a pillar point. And future needs, and we'll be in touch. The buckets you see before you is a marginal attempt at some humor. We have been held up by the Coastal Commission's approval of our dredging activity. We have all other permits and approvals. We're just waiting on the Coastal Commission so that we can dredge the harbor before salmon season starts. And avoid the dislocations and problems to a large number of the public who uses our launch ramp. So that's the update on that. In the interest of time, I'm going to stop there and of course be available for your questions and turn over the floor to our finance director, who will now present the district's fiscal condition and outlook.
Hi, good morning, everybody. And again, I want to thank the commissioners as well as the public for taking part today. Oh, sorry. Taking part of the day to kind of give us their insight and help us with our priorities. So the purpose of my presentation is to give the Commission an understanding of the district's current financial position and how we expect this position to change over time. And with these tools, I hope that the Commission will be able to help us determine how to use our limited resources.
Perfect. You're perfect now.
Resources for all of our competing priorities. And just to aid members of the audience, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of the district's finances. Okay. We have several sources of funds. We also have several uses of those funds. I want to start out with our uses of the funds. Let's see. The typical types of, actually, let's see. Most of these expenses are pretty obvious. For instance, employee expenses, those are personnel costs or benefit costs. The operating expenses, those are things like utilities, operating supplies that we need to run the district. Debt service that is related to the loans that we took out a long time ago to do infrastructure development, and each year we need to pay those loans back. And capital expenses are a little bit different than the other three in that these are really investments in our assets. And so if you're ability or something else that value. But it is in fact a use of our resources. In terms of our sources of funds, the district we basically categorize them in two major categories, operating and non-operating. Our operating revenues are things like your birth rents, things that are our leases, things that are established either in our rates and fees or our contracts. And they are fees that users pay for services that are rendered to them. Property taxes make up anywhere from half to a third of our revenues. And part of the reason that we get property taxes is because we're more than just running a marina and a harbor. We also provide public access, search and rescue activities, and other things that provide more of a general benefit. We have received reimbursements, and some of those are for small things like electricity. Our users use electricity and then reimburse us for our costs. And some are for other large things. For instance, this year we received $2 million, we will be receiving $2 million in reimbursements from the city of South San Francisco for investments in Oyster Point Marina, which is owned by the South City. And I'm going to skip over the next one, but I'm going to go to grants. Every year, for instance, we receive grants through the Department of Boating and Waterways to do abatement on abandoned vessels. And that's often captured as kind of our operating revenues because it helps us achieve part of our business. And then there are other things of interest income. And going back to reserves now, I just want to kind of clarify a little bit about what I mean by reserves because there's different uses of that term. What I'm talking about here is that in some years, revenues from sources are greater than the expenses for that year. And in those cases, we set aside that excess to be used at a later time, either for investment in our infrastructure, or potentially for, if there's an emergency or disaster, or if there are years in which there is, revenues are not great enough to cover our expenses. We can then draw on those reserves and use those. And one other thing is that in terms of the other category, I mentioned that we earn interest on the cash that we've set aside as we built this reserve. We also could potentially do something like debt financing, which would fall within the other category. So that kind of leads into the next slide, which is our debt financing. And it's been a number of years since the district has obtained debt financing. As a result, you'll see that our debt financing has kind of been on a downward decline. And this slide should actually look very familiar to the commission and some of the public who've been here before, because we haven't taken on any new debt. The one thing that I did modify this year was that we do have cash collateral that's been set aside in case we ever default on our loans. We don't intend to do that. So basically, once the principal's paid off, you no longer have to hold that collateral. And so we're showing a balloon payment in the final year, which is why there's a bit of a steeper incline in that very final year. And so that's the one modification we made to the graph, and it's for, we have about 1.7 with interest that will be used toward that balloon payment and will allow us to pay off in December of 2018.
No,
Okay.
I'm doing hand exercises because I have an injury.
Oh, no problem. Okay. So I kind of talked generic about what our sources of funds were, but just to provide some more specifics, there's these two graphs give you an idea of how much you get from each of those various sources. And the revenue planning document, we use estimates, and then at the end of the year, we have audited financials which show exactly what we spent. And so I kind of wanted to show the last year that we have of actuals, and the last year we have audited financials is the 10-11 year. We're still working on the 11-12. And then I also wanted to show the budget, which is, but instead of using just the budget, I used the projected 12-13. So where we anticipate where our sources of revenues are going to be by June 30th of this year. And so these tables isolate the 5 major revenues that the district receives. Operations are here in light blue, and again, those are the berth rents, the fees for the services. Let's see, the property taxes are the ones that are in yellow, and something you're going to notice here, that's pretty obvious when you look at the 2 years, is that reimbursements have gone up significantly, and that we have this new category, draw on reserves. And the reason that we have that is basically, it kind of goes into our use of funds. And these are kind of looking at the same 2 years and looking at the expense side of things. And what you notice is that the capital expense changes from 4% to 36%. And so that's part of the reason we have that big reimbursement. It's the $2 million we're getting from the city of South San Francisco. It's also part of the reason why we're drawing on our reserves. The other thing that isn't apparent in this graph is that the size of these pies have increased. When you invest in the capital, you end up spending more, and the 12-13 projected expenses are roughly 50% greater than the 10-11 actual expenses. And what I kind of want to help make sure gets across in my presentation is that starting this fiscal year, 2012-13, the district began investing in our infrastructure. And some of this was a result of long-term planning. For instance,
Is it okay if I just ask a point of clarification on the previous slide? If you could go back to the previous slide, I noticed, and it could just be the way the percentages are playing, that total tax percentage, operating revenue cost percentage went down because obviously you've got new sources of income joining on reserves. But overall, have your taxes or your operating revenues diminished from 2010-11 to 2012-2013?
No, actually, both property tax went up, and we have seen some increases in our operating.
So it's just because you've got this extra pocket now that
It's
okay.
basically kind of reallocating where our sources we've drawn in some additional reimbursements, so it's just the pie around a little bit. But again, yeah, you're right, the pie on the 12-13 is a little bit bigger than the pie on 10-11.
Thank you, Ed.
Along the same lines, when you do the pies and percentages, it includes the basic information of what the numbers are. Are the actual revenues and projected spending somewhere else, like on a website where somebody could go and look and see taxes were X amount, 2011, 10, 11, and X Y amount in 2013?
On the 10-11, you'll find them in our financials, so yes, it is on our website. On the 12-13, those are actually your projected, what we anticipate that the revenues will be by the June 30th of this year. And so we had a budget for 12-13, and at the midway point, we kind of looked and said, okay, are we on track with our budget? Do we need to modify it at all? And so what we're going to be bringing forward in our next meeting is a projection as well as an exercise.
Perhaps the spreadsheet that underlies these two pie graphs is all I'm talking about, so that people can see what the numbers actually are. That's all I'm pointing at.
Perfect. Okay, so I think when we were talking about how our change in capital from 4% to 36%, a big piece of that has been something that's kind of been in development for a while. For instance, Oyster Point Marina, that was a long-term plan to start replacing the docks there. Some of the other things that we've invested in capital investments have been a result of Harbor Master Ruby's efforts to basically go through, try to identify what can be done to address our aging infrastructure problems. And in that process, he's identified some projects that require immediate attention. For instance, the tenant sewer project over at North Point Harbor. And Harbor Master Ruby is going to be discussing in greater detail with you all of the things that he discovered. But one of the things, but one of the things I just kind of want to point out before we get to the next slide is sort of the process that we went through, because it kind of impacts the next slide. I'll help put it in context, but he's going to be discussing specific projects with you. So basically, after taking an inventory, Harbor Master developed a list of high priority capital projects, meaning projects that address either legal requirement, have revenue generating potentials, or ensure that the district avoids a situation that could lead to a health or safety problem. And after identifying those projects, he estimated the cost of completing the project and scheduled them over a multi-year period. Mr. Green will discuss the projects again, but basically I took the information that he developed and integrated that into what I expected our project outlook to encompass. And so one of the things that you need to be aware of as you look at this slide is that it is based on a lot of assumptions. Not only are the numbers that, the numbers that we put in this capital line based on estimates, but we've also, estimated very roughly what we expected revenues to grow by and operating expenses, and it's not necessarily incredibly detailed. It was based on some larger assumptions. So one of the things that you'll notice, though, is that we're going through a period where we're investing a lot in our capital. And in 12-13, it's kind of interesting because you'll see that we anticipate that we're going to have a draw on our cash of $1.4 million, and yet we are investing $4 million in our capital projects. Now, the $4 million investment in our capital projects is a lot higher than it is in the subsequent 3 years, and yet our draw on reserves is lower. And again, that kind of goes back to, that's because we got a $2 million offset from the city of South San Francisco. We also got a $250,000 grant from the federal government that helps basically make sure that you're using less of your cash in order to meet these objectives. And the other thing I kind of want to make sure that I point out on this slide before we leave it is that there's two lines at the bottom. There's the revenues less expensive, so sort of your net, for your budget thing, and then there's also your impacts on cash. And the reason I put both of those down there is because your expenses are recognized when they're incurred. Your revenues are recognized when they're earned. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's when you're going to get cash for these things. So kind of a good example is our debt service that we have. When we borrowed the money from the Department of Building and Waterways, we recognized the expense at that time, but we're paying it out over a 20-year period. And so the cash that we're paying each year for the principal on that debt isn't reflected in your budget, but it is kind of reflected in this bottom line. So I tried to estimate kind of how our use of cash is going to happen each year.
Where is that slide in our material?
It should be using it. This one's fine.
I didn't get it because it wasn't in the packet.
And that's sort of true of your revenues. For instance, we've earned the $2 million from South San Francisco. We've met all the requirements to get the money, but they haven't actually sent us our check yet. We do anticipate that check's going to arrive before June 30th, but essentially there are timing things like that, but sometimes across fiscal years, and as a result, your use of cash could be potentially different than your net of revenues and expenses. So what this does tell us is that in these next 4 years, while we're looking at doing some investment in our capital, that we're going to be drawing on our cash, and our revenues for each individual year aren't going to be enough to cover the expenses for that individual year. But we do have options. Now, again, the first thing that you have to make sure that you remember is that these are all assumptions. The big piece here is our capital. This could come in lower than what we estimate. There could be weather or big protests or staffing things that impact our ability to get all of the things achieved. So the timing of when our projects will happen is, subject to change, as is the amount that we've built in. Secondly, if, for instance, everything comes in exactly according to schedule, which is unlikely to happen, then the district does have options. First of all, obviously, we will seek any grants that we could obtain. We don't expect that there's going to be any grants in the neighborhood of the $2 million that we saw this year, but we do think that some of these projects are good candidates for getting grant reimbursements. The other thing is that some of these projects are going to pay for themselves over time because they do generate revenues. The next option that's available to you is the use of reserves. That is one of the purposes and reasons for setting aside the reserves, is to use them later for investment in your infrastructure. Well, it's possible to rely solely on the use of reserves and meet the schedule. It's probably not advisable. Basically, some of the cash that we have outstanding doesn't really belong to us. Some of it is restricted because of collateral. So, for instance, the piece that don't belong to us is the pieces that are customer deposits or customer prepaids. In addition, the commission, when they look at what their assets are, their net assets, they basically have gone through and identified different set-asides for different projects. And so if we were going to try to use reserves solely to address all of the lower of the thing you saw on the last slide, basically the bottom 2 lines on the last slide, if we were to do that, we would have to take some of those set-asides and dip into them, which probably isn't what the commission wants to do. But another alternative is to go ahead and obtain outside financing. So we could, that'll obviously impact the rate at which we pay off our debt. And another option is for the commission to give us direction, either through today or through the budget process or the next year's budget process, to basically look at each of these projects and to give us input on how, if they want to shift some of these priorities or delay the timing of implementation of the projects. So those are kind of the options available to you in order to move these. And again, keep in mind it is an estimate. So, with the actual bids, you may find that we've overestimated the cost of the projects. But the cost of the projects is next. Oh, sorry.
Commissioner, have any questions? Harbor Master Grindy, you're up. You're gonna start with your list of must-dos? Okay.
Just for the sake of clarification for the commission and the audience, I tried to categorize this into 4 different color-coded areas. The yellow being a must-do, the light blue being a should-do, a green being a nice-to-do, and a salmon color basically to say can delay if we need to. And the can delay could be a year to a couple years out. Going down the list of the yellow must-dos, I have the multi-purpose building. First off, I should say we're starting out with color point in those groups there, and then I'll move into the other categories as well. So starting out, we have the multi-purpose building design and permit. Then the trail to Mavericks. Then, and this one is probably a real good show and tell for the picture itself. You've probably heard that we went in earlier this year into design for some electrical with our ABC recreational docks. And if you look at the picture, you'll actually see one of the issues. The transformer is on a float that is starting to sink. And the transformers are also rusted out. So you start taking the high voltage and you put that together, at some point this is going to be submerged if you don't get it fixed. So that reason, yeah.
I just had a couple of questions. Could we back up to the first slide, the multi-use or multi-purpose building? So
Yeah.
just for people that are tuning in on
Right.
television, could you explain why the district is spending this money and what the district is going to get out of it? Just so people understand what this is.
This would be a multi-purpose building. It would also be the one portion of the building would be used for the district administration, so they're not renting anymore. They'd be in an ownership mode at the Pillar Point Harbor office area. You know, I think that one of the reasons it's in a must-do category is because the process is so long. It could be 2 to 4 years before even the permit's approved.
Do we know what the projected cost of the building would be?
There's been discussions, but nothing's firmed up yet. That would be more for what the commission would decide to do.
And then on the next slide, where you've got the trail.
Yes.
So what is the trail repair? Does that include doing anything about the parking lot that needs to be
It
addressed?
has some portions to it, yes, but
Does
not a
it-
restroom.
It doesn't include the restroom,
No.
but it does include the parking lot? And could you talk a little bit about, like, where that figure came from and what's included?
That was actually the engineer's estimate we initially had about a year ago.
So it's about a year old?
Yeah.
Okay. And then on the docks, I know that you and I had talked recently about the finger docks that are all wonky. So
Oh, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
could you talk a little bit about that too? And this doesn't address that, right?
No, this is purely the electrical, and we have not gone down and addressed the one that you recently brought up. So what that is the fingers, many of the fingers are starting to demonstrate flotation leveling issues. Not so much not floating, but they're starting to lean. And so staff have tried to make their efforts to correct that. We have a contractor out, Bellingham Marine, that's going to give us an estimate, I think, actually today. And more of that is probably more geared towards maintenance at this point, unless we can't get the maintenance to be done, then it would become a capital project. And not to jump too far forward in this, but one of the things I'm asking for also is a facility condition survey for both sites, Pillar Point and Western Point. One of the reasons for that is it gives you a 5-year projection from a consulting engineer, architects, et cetera, team that allows us then to be able to say, here's approximately how much it'll be per year if we delay or do for that work with design, et cetera, buried into that. What it also does is you have then those consultants, we can establish what we know is a problem, such as these fingers, but they can actually put a real number to it.
Okay, thank you.
So it gives us a tool to better bring to you information that's even tighter.
Bill?
Yeah, I got a little bit confused about the first slide about the building. Is that the same building that was being discussed in previous meetings for the parking lot?
Yes.
And then the other issue that came up is, so I thought the offices down in the harbor, is that what we're talking about, that you currently rent now? They're not owned by the harbor district?
Are you referring to the harbor master office?
Yeah.
That's owned by the district, yes.
Okay, so which offices are you renting now that this?
Over at Oyster Point?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought we were just talking about Pillow Point.
No, but basically, this is something we would
It's
not
both.
spend
I got you.
$90,000 a year to rent over there.
I saw.
Yes.
Okay, so your multi-purpose building, which is listed under Pillar Point Capital Projects, is really for Oyster Point.
No. It's district administration offices would be part of that multi-purpose building. So in other words, it'd be just like a typical, moving it over.
To eliminate South City, right?
Because basically right now it's a rental site that we're using.
Okay, and then I'm curious, I have to leave in a few minutes, but why the ADA corrections are as a nice to do when there is a history in many places of serious lawsuits.
Oh, you're jumping into the blue.
I'm jumping into the blue, but I consider ADA to, and I think anybody with a business understands that ADA corrections that need to be made are a serious legal liability. Not, and if they've been identified and you have put them in the nice to do instead of in the must do, you're leaving yourselves even further open to liability because the ADA attorneys will come in and say, see, they weren't real serious about this.
And that may change.
That's why I made
Yeah, these are
comments.
color-coded for the board to then adjust. These are for my recommendation and the team's recommendation. The one thing I should state though, because you are leaving early, when it comes to ADA, if we are presently accommodating someone, like we have a voter who's a wheelchair ADA person, and so that person we actually accommodate by going outside to meet them. And in other cases, it could be that we accommodate in other ways, whether it be through phone, computer, going through the back door where there's a ramp, there's other different means, so we are accommodating the person. We're also looking at the fact that the whole traffic flow of that building is different now than it was years ago. And so we're trying to accommodate just even the people who walk in the door.
Right, well, I would just say that as a business owner who has had to do hundreds of thousands of dollars changes to my buildings to accommodate ADA, merely accommodating somebody is not adequate in this legal atmosphere. I've seen businesses close down because of that.
Marietta, you had a comment?
I just want to say, as having worked for the state for 15 years in ADA compliance issues, the building itself, it is accessible. There is the back door with a ramp. It's an accessible building. There's obviously plenty of things that we could change to make it more accessible, and you can always do that. I think that's, could do that almost anywhere, but the building itself is accessible.
Good.
Okay, so, let's see, we ended up, I think we're at this point here. Is there another question?
Yeah, I have a question. Okay, so we're talking about dock repair. This amount of money is simply for electrical,
Yes.
but what about actually maintenance of the docks where the nails are coming out, the boards are coming up?
That would be under our maintenance. There's a lot of projects in this list. Some may be further in the back that are discussed as maintenance items. Or it might be like if you have one board or a couple boards that are starting to come loose on the dock itself, it might be that falls into a maintenance category. Has anyone, other than just staff, has someone come to the staff and said, can you do a work order on this? We have a couple boards that are kind of loose.
Well, the question is, the reason I ask this is I actually have a sailboat over on B-Dock.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's a lot of repair that needs to be done. And there is a woman that lives out there, and she caught her foot on a nail that has been coming up, has been working up. And it required a lot of stitches, took her to the hospital.
First to hear about it.
She's considering suing.
Yeah, this is the first to hear about
And
it.
she said that she did go to the office and said, you guys have got to address these problems. So my question is, if the maintenance of these docks is put at a lower level, how does that reflect on these liability issues if you don't put safety first?
I don't disagree with what you're saying. Some of these categories are presented in the sense of what can actually be done in a given year as well.
Right,
So,
but
and I'm not here to debate that. I guess I'm trying to just say, you're bringing a new issue, which was nails in the dock. And that's great. Let's hear about that. I did not hear about that. John, who's our assistant harbor master for the district at that location. Are you talking Code Point?
yeah.
He had not heard about it either. So, not sure the process of what went on with your friend and that injury.
I don't even really even know her. I'm just saying she did it. She was, and I wanted to see how she was doing. I don't even know her name. She just said that she's reported the problems in the dock and nothing has been done. My question is, can the harbor afford a lawsuit over liability issues, over the fact that you're ignoring the fact that the docks need repair and that maintenance is not a high priority?
Maintenance is a high priority, but some of that falls, this is capital we're talking about. In some cases, without us going out and identifying what your issue is,
Okay.
it might be a maintenance issue, not a capital.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and some of these things are what serve, like in the sense of a transformer float replacement. We're talking the float that it's sitting on, where the transformer, the blue box that you're seeing,
Yeah.
there, sitting. And the whole point is if that fails, we end up having to vacate that whole dock.
Okay.
So we're looking at the priority of what impacts everybody as well, not just maybe one float that needs somebody. So I'm trying to get the bigger issues here. Because if we start to look at, the wood docks, if you look at Oyster Point, we're already starting to move to concrete surface type docks. And there's a point where you have to say there's an age point where the repair is higher than it's worth doing. Let's go to a new float, or the flotation issues start to happen, where you then move to concrete.
Brenda, would you hold that question and write it down so he can get through his presentation? And at the end of his presentation, at the end of his presentation, he'll go through the questions, okay? Give us a minute, go ahead.
Thank you. Moving on, we have the sewer lift station and a flow meter. If you're in the Code Point parking lot, you would see this box. It's over the vault, and it's basically controls and such that need to be replaced. This has been the original equipment, and it's due time. Looking at the side view of underneath the Johnson Pier, there's a lot of older conduits and utility pipes as well. And the main feeder that goes out to the end of the pier serves the tenant fisheries buildings, and the fuel station and other is having some conduit failure to where it's time to replace the conduit as well. Some of this is discovered as we move into a different project. Our mooring walls for Pillar Point Harbor, one of the things I'm hoping to do with this project and numerous other projects is to move to where we budget annually a certain amount of money for maintenance or replacement or capital money towards certain projects, so that we're continually doing continual repair every year, because we know they're going to fail every year or every couple of years. In this case, it's usually not the mooring wall that fails, it's the chain that rusts away underneath the water, and they have to be surveyed annually anyway. Sorry. The fishing pier riprap report, this price came from our engineers. This is a project that's on our list. We probably will not get done until this coming year. Here's what we talked about, the facility condition survey. I've done this numerous times, and what it does, it projects out 5 years from when the consultants are here. And then about year 4, you bring them out again, do it again to update everything. So you always have a condition readiness available information. So if the board asks or something comes up, we can project when we need to replace that. Right by the Pillar Point Pier, Johnson Pier, you can see a sinkhole appearing. That's a fire line that we're assuming is what's failing, where one of the joints is starting to leak, so we want to patch that. We open it up and repair the pipe. Under should do in the light blue, this is the ADA we just spoke about, refurbishment of the building. It's not just an entry area issues, it's also how we serve people inside the building. If you've ever been out there on a Saturday or Sunday when you have hundreds of people around the area, you can only serve about 2 to 3 customers at a time there because of the design presently in place. We have some truck replacements for both Pillar Point and Oyster Point. The salt water does wondrous things to the trucks as well as just the age. They were bought as surplus vehicles. The hope would be is to, we budget for a new vehicle, but we hope to spend less by going to a surplus government agency like federal or the state that might have low mileage vehicles to sell. A revenue item that I looked at, we have what's called the sales dock at Johnson Pier. One of the items that goes on here is we have fishermen who will sell fish from time to time off that pier. In watching for roughly the last year since I came here, one of the things I've noticed is that it gets used maybe 10% at most at any given day. The thought here being this could also become a place where we could put our guests if we put power and water in. So we could actually generate some revenue because this dock is kept open and empty otherwise. So we could accommodate fishermen, we could also accommodate some guests that come in. Because what happens now with some of our guest mortgage issues is the guests are out on the coast, they're wanting to come in, and we have to find a slot for them of a vacant slip. This way they know exactly where to go, it's closer to the restrooms, and so forth.
And the dock is sturdy enough so if we had power and water, we won't have to go back and replace it later?
Yes. We talked about the tenant project for the sewer lines underneath the tenant buildings. This is just the project for which we put funding forward for design about 3 months ago or so. And this is for the replacement of those lines. And just to make a sidebar comment, one of our tenants today called up and said it's happened again. It's plugged up and backed up. And Liz was the person we called who was just here a couple weeks ago thanking us for that repair. She's on the midstream going downhill, as they say with sewer. And basically, it's the uphill side that's has so much debris and whatever coming through their lines is clogging downstream, and she's one of the people in downstream, so it backs up into her restaurant. One of the other items we were talking about, we are in the process of geotech work right now, is fishing storage for commercial fishermen and or recreational fishermen. And the intent behind this is some kind of a structure. This is just a picture of a modular or a metal board type structure. But the intent though is that you would have lockable secure storage for their gear. Depending on what kind of gear they have and size, whatever. But at least it provides a clean, simple looking design, and we can obviously make revenue off of it. It also helps our commercial fishermen stay here.
I have a couple questions about this. So when you put in a structure like this, it takes that parking area potentially, but it would also block additional parking area because you have to keep the opening free so that people can pull their boat in and out or whatever. Where did this, I'm not understanding where this idea is coming from because I've been talking with fishermen recently and I haven't heard them asking for this project. So I'm just, it's...
Well, it could be the fishermen you're talking to are different fishermen than what I've talked to. But the intent is in most harbors, and I'll use ones from the Northwest because that's where I came from, this is what they have done.
Well, who's asking for it?
I've had different commercial fishermen saying they wish they had storage.
And we have a lot of storage here in Princeton all
Yeah,
around.
we did a survey of that just about, I think say a month and a half, 2 months ago. And that survey was basically everybody has it, but it's full at the time too. So it comes down to where, and the other part of the convenience here is that your commercial fishermen don't have to look. If you've been at the harbor lately, you see a lot of crab pots leaving the harbor right now. So as gear goes, that means that they have to truck it out. But here they'd be able just to forklift it to a location.
Well, I'm a little concerned about becoming a storage facility and what that brings. I mean, I know there have been a lot of problems in Princeton with things going on in these storage facilities, like methamphetamines, that sort of thing. And, I'm just concerned about safety. I'm concerned about, have we really thought this through as far as the type of management that's going to be needed to make sure that nothing funky is happening in, I could see people wanting to live in
Rules and
there.
regulations, we would have the option typically as a agency who's renting it to be able to access those spaces. So for fire inspections or other, we give notice to the people, but basically you have access, just like an apartment building, you have access. So when you're talking meth and things like that, I don't think that's relevant here.
Well, it's been relevant in Princeton.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
That's also, here we have staff there, we have more awareness of what's going on in those.
Well, I know staff is spread pretty thin, so I'm just concerned about creating another level of, things that they have to manage in addition to everything else. And I'm a little concerned about security in a structure like that. Would there be a plan to have video security or something of that nature?
Typically, we've already said no to video security just about a year ago, as I recall.
I think there's a question over there.
Yeah, let me, you can ask this one question, then I'm going to ask you to, number one, please take a moment to fill out a speaker slip. And then if you could hold the questions till the end of his presentation. But ask this one now.
I apologize, I didn't see any speakers.
No problem, no problem.
But I'll wait. I think my question reflects what Serena just said. It's like the staff at Mill Point Harbor is already overwhelmed, and on busy days, those poor guys have a lot to do. And so to add something like this, that they're going to have to keep track of and deal with the rent and all the accounting as well as the policing, where's the money going to be to hire extra staff?
Well, this is a revenue generating process, though, too.
Sure, if it's full and whatever, but I think you don't, I would say don't build it until you've got the staff to police it, otherwise these guys are already on that day.
Okay, moving on. Stormwater drain box refurbishment. What this is your catch basins. We have a lot of locations where age, the concrete's failing. It's starting to erode into the asphalt under layment of the asphalt. We are looking at, we have some old cargo type truck trailers and containers at the side of the maintenance shop. We're looking at putting 4 new ones and getting rid of the older equipment that's being used for storage materials.
That'll come back to us before you do anything, right?
Yeah. We have a 2-ton forklift right now that's basically, we hope it runs on a daily basis. It's gone through a lot of tune-up and repair, and it's time for a new one. It's used a lot to assist our commercial fishermen and others. The nice to-dos in the green. Some kind of signage up front. We have the fishing vessels that require, or remember at Filler Point. That boat basically was put up there a few years ago and it is rotting away. There's only so much paint you can put on before it finally will give up.
Can I just interrupt for just 1 second? So I got a couple of emails this morning regarding this particular concept with the LED sign, and I got an email from Dan Haggerty with the Midcoast Community Council, which I'll read during public comment, but he was particularly concerned about this sign as well as some other issues. And I also got an email from Ed Lorenas, who's the chair of the San Mateo County Surf Rider Foundation chapter, and he also didn't think that this sign was appropriate or necessarily the best use of the district's money. So I just wanted to communicate that now, and I can read those comments later.
Maybe one item I'd like to share on that, what does concern me at that location, is that by not having a set real sign that has some adapting to where we can put some digital readout, what we're ending up with is continual sandwich signs, posters, etc. being posted up there that we have to maintain using staff time to eliminate. and it's also in Caltrans, so they're having to do it as well. And so, you know, cleaning up that corner is also as important too.
Well, some people might find this sign to be,
And this is just an example of a sign type. You know, I pulled a picture off the web to give a visualization of a sign.
yeah, it looks
I
like,
didn't say this was our design sign.
it looks like something you'd see, you know, at a gas station or a strip mall, or it just doesn't, we have such a beautiful harbor here. It'd be a shame to
And I'm not arguing
degrade
that.
it.
I'm not arguing that. What this is about is that I had to come up with a sample picture for a PowerPoint presentation, just like I would for a vehicle. And so I pulled one off the web so we have a picture of what a sign might look like. Doesn't mean this is the sign.
Mhm.
It could be that, you know, the board would have to agree with the design anyway.
And again, all of this comes before us.
Right.
Before you make a decision.
Oop. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, one more, and then we've got to keep going.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if the district has used a Bobcat, okay, like for the West Trail.
We do not have a Bobcat that's part of the time.
So when you need one, what do you rent one, or what do you do?
We've rented equipment in the past for different purposes. This one here, one of the things most of us on the coastal side are aware of is sometimes the roads closed. It's also so that we can reduce staff labor. We have a lot of staff with a lot of vehicles and fuel cans and everything else has to be going to the local gas station. What this that basically does is provide us where when they're fueling the fuel here, they can fuel up a tank for us so we can actually keep fuel at the location. Convolt tanks are very safe and they're very commonly used. Unfortunately, this boat's in the picture, but the bulkhead area is what I'm looking at along to the right of this. Where one of the things that I see as a projected issue is that, again, back to the guest voters. We do get a lot of guest voters trying to find spots. We also have potential for a U.S. Coast Guard or a similar vessel. They need to have a spot that's dedicated to them. And it's also just having the floats themselves. It gives us more opportunity for different kind of short-term voters. In our can delay category,
Could you speed through those, please, so we can keep?
I guess I will. ADA design and construction. There's a few locations that I've seen that do need an improvement or correction to the sidewalk curb cuts. At Pillar Point, we have one laundry location, and we do get a lot of requests for commercial fishermen and others to make an additional one somewhere near the pier. We've done some temporary repairs to this already, but these stairs, they're starting to fail, the concrete's giving way, you can see the rebar in some of the ditches. One of the newer categories that we brought to you recently was the EMS, Environmental Management System Clean Marina program for both harbors. One of the things we're looking at is making sure we have adequate spill kits at every dock and key locations so that if a spill does occur, whether it be on land or on water, we're ready to take care of it. The nice to-dos. We've heard a request that we should do more recycling. And we also, one of the things I also saw was that we need to do some new garbage containers at key locations. One of the things I learned in my past history is there's a product out there that's very dependable. It's a solar-powered compactor. What it does is when you have restaurants and such on the sidewalk area, it allows the trash to sort of get built up and it's compacted so that you don't have to empty it every 2-3 hours. You'll see these at airports a lot too. Catch basin filters and heavy metal filters. Again, one of these things is something I brought with me from my back history. It's just where we have stormwater that's going directly to the bay. It's more prevention. Adding new fish cleaning stations at both locations. Both of them are getting kind of old, so something that looks more like this newer one here that meets the needs a little better and also has some sewer line connections. Again, another spill response trailer. I would hope to see if I can get a grant for this, because typically the folks do provide grants for this type of product once in a while. But the intent is so we can respond, because sometimes our spill may not be in the harbor, it might be over by Mavericks Trail or somewhere in our neighborhood here, or on the same on Oyster Point, where we have to jump in a vehicle and go quick and respond. Can delays, one of the things we're looking at is we have a lot of trees at both sites, chipping so we can make compost, just a green program. Public access for Oyster Point and Pillar Point, we should use. Kayak and dinghy racks. These are not ones that would be so much a free rack, but they are like a rental slip of space. People can secure their kayak behind a locked gate. It provides them an opportunity to have a kayak location, probably a really higher demand right now at Oyster Point, being the trail is there. Nice to do's, adding more picnic tables and barbecues. We put a couple of those in, the barbecues near some existing tables over here. People love it. It's bringing people down to the waterfront even more. Just adding a few more bike racks in key locations, so that we do, people are biking into the areas and it gives them a chance to secure their bikes.
Can we talk about that for just a second?
Sure.
With bike racks,
Yeah.
I'd really like to have a big discussion at some point about the coastal trail and bicycle racks and bicycle rental, that sort of thing. So I think that's an area that we need to get into further. And bicyclists know that certain racks are more useful than others. And if you're not a bicyclist that uses a rack a lot, then that doesn't necessarily, that isn't knowledge that you might necessarily have. So I think it's really important to consult with bicyclists about what type of racks we might potentially invest in at some point, so that they are, they have a long life and they're actually used a lot. And I know, like for example, with the city of Half Moon Bay, they put in some racks that don't work that well for cyclists. So these get in, this is kind of, you can get into subtleties, but I think it's important if we were going to spend money, and I love the idea, but that we make sure we use, really useful racks versus some that are more decorative.
Okay.
Can I give you about 30 more seconds? And we want to open up a few questions before we take a break.
Oyster Point must-dos. Looking at a new dump vehicle, like a golf cart that has a dump vehicle type style to it. Just a vehicle replacement. We do have carts over there now. We do have a little bit of an issue at the Oyster Point Harbor Master office. At high tide, this is what it looks like if you were to walk out the ramp. If you go to the parking lot, that's the location. So we need to look at some tidal design and some access issues there.
Thank you.
Again, a vehicle replacement on that side. And again, the facility condition survey for that side. It would be a combined effort if we did it, but I'm putting funding on both sides. The should-dos, replacement of docks 12, 13, and 14 for design and permit only. We move forward with that. We've been doing restroom refurbishment. We're about ready to do the west restrooms here. We've been working on a couple of them. It just started up over at Oyster Point, and this is to continue that process to refurbish these restrooms here. Projects that have been delayed is site preparation. One of the things I've seen since I came here is to have at least power ready and pad ready for a vendor that might do kayak rental over at Oyster Point. They need power. They need a few minor things there so they can run business.
Great. What we're going to do, here's the schedule. We'll take a brief 5-minute only break. Then we'll go back and take questions from the audience on anything thus far. And then Commissioner Brennan has a presentation she wants to make. So that'll be the order of things. So we'll take a fast 5 minutes. And just 5, please.
Title V. Yeah, specifically.
You also have to think about presentation or anything else that's on your mind, keeping in mind that Commissioner Brennan will then make a presentation of her own, and we'll follow that up with some more comments, and then we'll open it up to the public for general conversations and comments. Any questions of Harbor Master Grindy? Oh, please, pray that you have questions. Brenda.
Okay, is this on your long, on this long list of presentation? Yeah, I have some questions.
Okay.
On your multi-purpose building, two questions. One, I understand the office, it'd be great to get the district office here. What's the other part of multi-purpose? I don't get that. And then also, I'm used to seeing design and permit, the upfront cost presented to me, and it's a percentage of the overall expected cost of that program or that building or that budget. So I'd really like to know what's that big picture of.
Some of the numbers are historical in the last year. So, but, the value of the building, the by square footage, as far as established and everything. It was here before I got here.
The multi-purpose building, what's the expected size of that building?
Was that what size of the building was 20?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, this multi-purpose or multi-use building is in concept only at this point. There are no specific plans that we can share with you at this time because they don't exist yet. Basically, the idea is as follows. Number one, the Harbor District's administration office is in rented quarters over in South San Francisco. The Board of Harbor Commissioners needed to move the admin activity out of the old existing Pillar Point Harbor office because there were too many people in there. There were potential OSHA violations, just inefficiency. It wasn't working anymore. That decision had two parts to it. Number one, the move to rented quarters. In parallel, the board decided that they wanted eventually to have a permanent location for the administration office and one for which they would not need to pay rent. And so ultimately, after looking at Oyster Point Marina, looking at Coastside, looking at the North Peninsula, the board has concluded that at Pillar Point Harbor, there is land that we own, and so any cost for a building would be building only. We wouldn't have to buy land anywhere. We wouldn't have to rent. So that's the overall approach.
And let me stop you there if I
Yes.
may, because that's really, that's going to really come before us, and it involves public input, and we're a long way from there. So I don't want to get too far off on one direction.
Okay.
Other questions? Brenda, go ahead.
Well, actually I asked one very specific and narrow question. I see $280,000 for design and permit of the building. I'm used to seeing money proposed in context of the size of the building being proposed. So if this were for a huge office complex or, say the U.S. Pentagon, it would be, wow, what a good deal. But if this were for a tiny little, 4,000 square foot, one-story thing, I would be a little bit upset. So all I want to know is, how big is this building supposed to be? And the multi-purpose, I understand the office part, but what's the other part? Multi-purpose, whether it's storage.
It could be very well be a visitor center with one of the federal agencies. It's not nailed down yet. It's very fluid. This is very, very preliminary, and this is just studies to see if in fact something could be put on that parcel of land. We don't know. And that's what the expenditures are for now. And the permits are just early on permits, not permits to build.
And the approximate size of it and approximate outlay?
Probably less than 20,000 square feet.
Okay, and in this approximate
you know, big picture dollars from X to Y.
Well, I guess if you were in construction, which I happen to be, but not well versed on the numbers, I would say $200 a square foot would not be inconsistent. Other questions of Scott's presentation? Bill?
I thought that's what the slips were that we were filling out to go with just this presentation, but I'll jump in. So I just want to make a couple of points. I think Sabrina brought them up earlier, the thing about the sign and some of the other, what I would call, not necessarily issues of safety or high priority matters. As a historical perspective, I know you mentioned the boat kind of rotting, but at least it sort of fits in character. You had a meeting here October 3rd, 2010, about the harbor planning and such, and there was about 20 people, and the majority of the people said that they don't want the character of the harbor to change, that is the draw, that it's a working fishing village, that it is kind of eclectic, I'll use that word, but it's what gives it the character of the coastside that people appreciate. So when I see things like the storage sheds going in there, the electronic sign, which you make a good point that, you know, you can change it for, you know, events and things like that. I'd like to remind you that in 1988, when Westinghouse owned the land that the Harbor Fishing Mall is on, they proposed this fake lighthouse, which got the whole community upset because it was just so out of character. And that begot the MCC that, you know, still, you know, tries to represent the community here. I think you've got to really look at what makes, you know, the nature of this community, and the less we look like other harbors out there, the less we start to import stuff from areas that aren't fitting to the natural beauty of the coast, the more people in this community don't like it. And another quickie is the mention of Perch Beach and the ramp. Yes, the ramp does need to be pulled out, but putting the sand on Perch Beach I know is like a huge a negative factor to the people that were at the October 3rd meeting a couple of years ago. So I'm not against them dredging, but I mean, people have been trying to offer other solutions of where to put that sand, maybe south where the erosion's taking place, and down around Fort Ottawa and those kind of places. So I know you'll have more meetings on this, but just as long as these are coming up and you're looking at priorities, I think the docks, the nails that Mary mentioned, things like that that are real immediate safety issues, probably should bubble up to the top. And
yeah. As it pertains to the administrative office and or anything else that goes there, we're a long, long way from that process. And as you point out, there'll be a lot of public input. But I can tell you, we've already kicked around some thoughts that it's got to fit into the harbor if we do anything. I mean, it just can't be, like you say, eclectic out there. It doesn't look like it fits nowhere. It's got to be part of that motif, and we're sensitive to things like that. Robert?
Just one minor thing. We're in complete agreement. I just want to echo what General Manager Vernell said about how these were all prioritized, you know, in terms of the sort of litmus test, what makes things must-dos versus kind of wanna-dos and things like that, is health and safety rises to the top, legal mandates rise to the top, obviously, things like that, and everything else kind of window dressing items would definitely, you know, unfortunately fall at the bottom, even though we want to do everything as ambitious as we are to this. So I just want to echo what Mr. Brunel said about why and how this list got put together.
So that raises a good point about safety and how these priorities were put together. So I do think safety is something that should come first, and I know that these priorities came from staff, not from the commission. I mean, I certainly wasn't consulted on what the priorities should be. I'm a little concerned about that, but also getting into the safety thing, I know that in 2 places in the presentation, ADA compliance came up. And I do think that having ADA compliance not as a top priority is a mistake. So that's something that I think we need to reevaluate. And I think ADA compliance should definitely be up there on the top of the priority heap because it does put us at risk for a lawsuit, but also, you know, we need to make sure that we're accessible for people with physical disabilities. So That's one comment. And then I really did appreciate the slide included about the recycling and and additional trash containers, and that's something that I appreciated that Scott included, so thanks for that. And then I had a question about the storage buildings. So my understanding is that the geotechnical work is being done in the upper parking lots for potentially putting in storage, this storage building structure. Is that correct?
That's not going to happen. We conferred with the Department of Boating and Waterways, and we would have to pay to remove a portion of that lot from the granted area, so we're not going to do that.
So the geotechnical's off then?
Correct.
Okay. So is there still geotechnical being...
Excuse me?
Is there still geotechnical being done in the parking lot B, but not in the upper parking?
Correct.
Okay, so only part of it's going to be
Correct.
done. So with the agreement with Department of Boating and Waterways, it's a 20-year agreement, right?
I don't remember. It's a grant contract. It's a long-term grant contract.
Okay.
I can find that out, but I don't.
Stackers as well.
Yeah.
All right. I'd love to see that. Is there? Can I get a copy of that?
Sure.
Great. Okay. I think that's it for my questions.
Let me just explain procedurally. I think the commissioners that have been through this before realize it, but this is just staff's presentation to the board, and at the end of which, and following community comments, your remarks are very to the point. But that's when we'll all make changes and then decide what priorities are and which items should be included up and down and out, and that'll all be done at the end of the process. Bill, comment?
I just remember one other thing I wanted to say, and it's not directly with his report, but there was a meeting about a week and a half ago between the county and GGNRA and a few other agencies about parking on the mid-coast. And one of the biggest issues, of course, is parking down by Sam's and El Granada Beach, which they kind of punted on because it's a huge problem. But I brought up the issue that they should be in discussions with the Harbor District, because you do have all that parking on the other side, and maybe they could be working out some kind of arrangement where they could funnel people into where there's space, and that's, so I know it's not high on your priority list, but it's something maybe you can keep your ears open for.
His door is always open.
So
We've got to move forward,
Okay.
Commissioner.
I have two more public comments that came in via email.
This is not the public comment. This is going to be your presentation time.
Well, these are comments on this presentation
Fine.
that was given by staff specifically. So these two individuals reviewed the presentation and weren't able to be here today. One, Dan Haggerty, is a electrician, and he works a full-time job and he couldn't make it today. So he says, sorry, my work schedule will prevent me from being at the meeting today. Why would the Harbor District schedule this at a time that most interested working community members would not be able to attend? Would someone please read my comments? I believe an LED sign would be the wrong direction to go with. Tacky is the word that comes to mind. I feel an LED sign would lower the postcard picture value of the entrance. Other options should be explored and allowed for public comment. The fishing storage building would also lower the picture value of the area, in my opinion. I personally enjoy seeing the crab pots and the activity out in the open. I enjoy being reminded that I live next to a working harbor. This is one of the reasons I moved here. I would imagine that most visitors would also want to see the interesting activity out in the open. I would appreciate an opportunity to comment on any new building ideas in the harbor's future. Please motion to table this topic to allow for evening or weekend public comments. Thank you, Dan Haggerty. He's a El Granada resident of 24 years. He's also a member of the Mid-Coast Community Council. And then the last one is from Ed Lorenas, who is, again, chair of Surfrider Foundation, and he says, I'm in Europe for work and will not make the meeting. One of my concerns with Pillar Point Harbor is related to the fuel dock area. There needs to be a review and follow-up of the fueling operation, including assessment of the current equipment does not meet standards, for example. Is there a defined protocol for fueling to avoid spillage? And is there a protocol to report and prosecute offenders? In my opinion, the fuel dock should distribute free of charge oil fuel, capture sponges, papers to use in bilge, etc. I don't see anything that addresses this in the plans or priorities. I think this sort of thing would be a much better use of funds than a sign. Actually, he says something and then the sign, but I'm not going to repeat that part. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Would you make your presentation now?
I have one more.
Go right ahead while she's setting up.
Yes, I have many comments on the budget materials. Will those comments be accepted in writing by,
If you like.
okay, great, thank you.
You'll give them to Peter, right? Is this, to follow along, is this the presentation we were given a copy of?
That's not the version that was supposed to be printed, but you can follow along with that to some extent.
Is this the one you're going to present now?
Basically, yes.
Okay, I don't want to get us in a problem with this Brown Act stuff you spoke of.
The file was provided even before the presentations we just saw were available. So you were sent the link along with everybody else. All you had to do was click it and download it if you wanted to look at the presentation. So it's been made available.
This is not what you're going to present today, then?
That's basically it. If you'd like a copy, it's right here.
Point of information, Mr. President. Indeed, Commissioner Brennan sent us an email with a link which we were supposed to click on in order to access that document. We were unable to do that, and we promptly provided an email back to her saying that if she wanted us to distribute that document for this meeting and to commissioners, that she should immediately send it to us by email directly or hand carry it to the office. Neither of those things were done, and so in fact that represents the third edition of the presentation. So in fact, nobody here has this.
That's not accurate. That is not what happened.
Does the commission have a copy?
That is what happened in my office.
Commissioner, does the commission have a copy of what you're going to present?
The commission has been given, the entire board, with the exception of Leo, who doesn't have email, were all sent links to the presentation. Everybody received the link. I've got the email right here. Here's a printout of. Your email address is on here. The link is on here. So it's, you got it, whether you printed it.
Is that,
You got the link, you did not get the document.
And I asked,
does
I
that
sent
comply
an
with
email.
Brown Act requirements?
I sent an email to Peter as soon as he emailed me and said he could not use the previous link. I sent him another link,
It didn't
and
work.
that, yes, it did, and I sent it to the entire board.
Madam,
We can.
in my
we can try
office,
I don't want to
it
get, I
did
don't want to
not
get, I don't want
work.
to get in an argument.
We can try it right now because I've got the
It
email.
may
on my
work there,
computer.
but it did not work
Well, let's
in
start
my
out and see
office
what
when
you
you
can do
sent
here.
it.
So,
Just press the arrows, just use the forward arrows, it should go.
is there a way to have the presentation take up the whole screen?
It's not a PowerPoint, so I don't know.
I can't even get the screen to show up.
You have a problem watching? You have a problem? You have a problem? Let's see if we can't get through it.
If that's easier for you, I can do that. Harbor Master Plan was adopted in 1991. It's a 22-year-old plan. And updating the Pillar Point Master Plan or developing a current Pillar Point Harbor strategic plan will require background studies, input from key stakeholders, public outreach, and a public visioning process that evaluates needs and results in a strategic plan for phased implementation. Right now, this is the Pillar Point Harbor plan that was developed in 91 is all we have. We don't have a current strategic plan. And the reason I'm giving this presentation is because I believe that we do need a current strategic plan. One of the things that I'm yeah, I kind of this came up for me when I was thinking about our website, and one of the things that I'd really like to see the district do is improve the quality of the website over time and include more information on the website that's relevant to the public. And to do that, I felt like I needed to start thinking about categorizing content, and I'm hoping that we do have an active website committee and that we can, as a commission, start to think about what content is important to communicate on the website. So my process was to do some background research and try to better understand the history of the district, and this plan is where I started. So it's not to say that I don't think Oyster Point Marina is equally as important. It's just that, you know, I started with this plan. There isn't really a plan for Oyster Point Marina in the way that we have this plan. And what has come up is that it appears that a lot of the things that are outlined in the plan haven't been updated or are potentially kind of obsolete plans that should probably be changed or removed and updated. Are we good? Okay. So just to give you a little background about why I did this. Okay, now you can see it goes. Oh, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on. So why update Pillar Point Harbor Master Plan? The 1991 Pillar Point Harbor Master Plan is the only strategic planning document available for Pillar Point Harbor, and it's obsolete. Going without a current comprehensive strategic plan results in a piecemeal approach to planning. The county will begin work on the Princeton Plan update soon. It would be good timing to begin a Pillar Point Harbor Master Plan update or develop a new Pillar Point Harbor strategic plan now, because this is a well-timed opportunity to work constructively with the public, the county, and the permitting agencies in a cooperative environment. Strategic plans should encourage consideration of water-dependent activities and supporting businesses as the highest and best use of harbor and surrounding area. The longevity of the harbor, the longevity and the health of the harbor depend on it. Local economic development as well as harbor development should be encouraged to focus on retaining existing water-dependent activities and adding new ones. Strengthening environmental performance by undertaking concrete and measurable actions through a process of continuous improvement should be prioritized. Obviously, we're talking about water quality, wildlife, the environment. Best environmental practices such as improving water quality and oil spill prevention are crucial to public safety. The Harbor District has an important role to play educating the public and voters about oil spill prevention, oil spill containment, improving water quality, protecting the marine environment, and protecting wildlife and seabirds. Coastal access. Strategic plans should encourage improved public access to the harbor facilities, including improved walkways, restroom facilities, and flexible outdoor space. And this includes ADA accessibility as well.
Pedestrian and bicycle access improvements will reduce the strain on harbor parking lots and improve air quality. This goal could be met by developing a plan to complete the California Coastal Trail segment through the harbor and include additional bike racks and a bike rental station. Encourage water-dependent recreational uses such as small boats, SUVs, and kayaks. Improve management of mooring fields and anchorage. Encourage marine-related infrastructure, boatyard, marine chandlery, and marine-related vendors located in close proximity to the harbor. Encourage a well-planned dredging and beach nourishment shoreline protection program. The Harbor District should not continue to miss beach nourishment opportunities along the Princeton shoreline and Surfers Beach. Sea level rise. In 1991, sea level rise was not a concern. Based on current scientific understanding, the Harbor District has an obligation to address sea level rise in a current strategic plan. Tsunami preparedness. Tsunami inundation preparedness should be addressed. Tsunami evacuation plans and ongoing public safety workshops should be referenced in a current strategic plan. The 1991 master plan. I wish I could get rid of that arrow, but I don't know how to do it here. Purpose of the master plan. The Pillar Point Harbor Master Plan will qualify as an urban waterfront restoration plan when approved by the Coastal Conservancy. An approved plan is a prerequisite for obtaining implementation funding from the Conservancy. That's a quote from the actual master plan. Costly project plans, engineering studies, and a multi-agency approval and permitting process are jeopardized when project concepts lack public support and are out of touch with current needs. Strategic planning is needed to adequately support commercial fishing, recreational boating, and ecotourism opportunities at Pillar Point Harbor. This large text is a quote from the master plan. The planning process must include public input, a 1 day per year Harbor District planning workshop held at 9 a.m. on a weekday without adequate public outreach and a very limited time for public comment does not qualify as an adequate planning workshop. Accessing current needs. Strategic planning is needed, is needed to adequately support commercial fishing, recreational boating, and ecotourism opportunities at Pillar Point Harbor. A steering committee should form, organize, and promote a series of Pillar Point Harbor visioning workshops. Participation and input from commercial fishermen, recreational boaters, county residents, visitors, and permitting agencies is needed. Strategic planning should include accountable metrics for measuring progress. It should be noted that a needs assessment will be conducted during 2013 as a first step in the county's Princeton planning effort. Another quote from the master plan regarding the process. In 1986, the district organized a Pillar Point Harbor planning team, including landscape architects, engineers, yada, 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 you can see there, to develop a conceptual plan. The comprehensive conceptual plan is not currently available online. I think it would be helpful if it was, so that's a request. Implementation, this is another segment from the master plan. It says each individual project will require preparation as a precise plan for agency review and funding submittal. It must be emphasized that any development will require public participation throughout the planning process. And then in blue are my comments, or questions rather. Has the Harbor District approved and implemented any precise plans? And I'm sure Peter will have something to say about that later. If so, were they based on projects outlined in the Pillar Point Harbor Master Plan? We need to publish all precise plans on the Harbor District website. 1989 EIR. The draft EIR was approved in February 1989, and the final EIR adopted in April 1989 by the Harbor District Board. EIR is not currently available online. That document would also be helpful if we could provide that online as well. Current planning process, December 1991. State and federal regulatory agencies have reviewed the plan for environmental impacts, and there is a lot of additional information referenced in an appendix for the master plan, which I have never seen, and I don't know if any of the other commissioners have seen it, but I'd love to see it. So that's another document that I would really love to see online for review. So if that could happen, that would be fantastic. And we could talk about how to manage data later. 1979 beachfront inside outer breakwater. So this is just a picture of what the beachfront looked like back in 1979. And just kind of an interesting side note, you can see the red arrow points out where the Surfers Beach restroom was located, and actually is still there today at the Pillar Point Harbor RV Park. Commercial fishing fleet. So this is the 1987 needs assessment survey, which is noted in the master plan. It's another quote from the master plan. Efforts to identify the major concerns of commercial fishermen and fish buyers and establish priorities for expansion or improvement of supporting facilities. So this is referenced. A dramatic reduction in the size of the commercial fishing fleet indicates an obvious change in needs from 1987 to 2013. So that's something that we need to address as a district and figure out what that means for us. This is a quote or an excerpt from the needs assessment, which was included in the master plan. There are between 200 and 300 commercial fishermen based in Pillar Point Harbor. The harbor master estimates there are only 50 fishermen active year-round in the harbor. From 50 active year-round commercial fishermen in 1987 to approximately 12 active year-round in 2013 is a big shift. So that's another point that should be discussed and validated, you know, where we actually really are today with that, because it does impact decisions that we make about the harbor. Why the fishing fleet matters in 2013. We are fortunate to operate one of the few remaining working harbors on the west coast of California. Pillar Point Harbor offers an opportunity to experience an open ocean port with a commercial fishing fleet. Residents of San Mateo County and beyond pack the harbor on weekends to immerse themselves in fishing culture. Pillar Point Harbor's strategic planning efforts should reflect the valuable contributions commercial fishing brings to the harbor district and the economy. It doesn't require a degree in economics to appreciate the benefits of commercial fishing brings to small businesses and the positive impacts on local tourism. If a current economic analysis were available, it would help inform and validate future harbor district planning efforts. A chart that outlines annual fish buyer and fishing vessel statistics would be useful. Commercial fish landing receipts data, species / gear combinations would be useful. Statistical information about coastal tourism and ecotourism would also be useful. Pillar Point Harbor has a tremendous opportunity to educate families about the sustainable seafood industry and the importance of environmental stewardship on the marine environment. A key initiative in support of the commercial fishing fleet is the future dredging required to provide deep water access within the harbor. Future dredging projects offer an opportunity to nourish beaches that have been compromised by erosion as well as improve coastal access. This is just a chart that I found off the NOAA website, and I thought it was interesting. It shows the fish catch over the years going from the 1930s to 2000, and you can see in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s there was kind of like a heyday, and I don't know if that's because there were more fish in the ocean or if it was because there were less regulations, probably because there were less regulations. But anyway, you can kind of see where we are, or close to where we are today in the 2000 area. Notes about fish sales. Fish sales off the dock were not permitted in the Pillar Point Harbor 1991 master plan. This important revenue generating activity is not addressed in the plan and should be. Princeton is zoned for marine use and storage sheds are currently available in Princeton. Each of the 3 fish fryers have 40-foot portable freezers, shipping containers located at the end of Johnson Pier. The portable freezers take up limited pier space. The freezers could be relocated to make room on the pier for a 4th hoist. Cold storage for fishermen was mentioned as a Princeton use in the consultant interviews for the County Princeton Planning Update. And those interviews just happened recently, like literally a month or so ago. It's my understanding that the district might be doing something about the freezers, so maybe we can hear more about that later. This is a photo from 1986, so around the time that the fisherman's survey was being done. You can see, this is right before that, you can see that, you know, the commercial fishing fleet just kind of arrived really suddenly because this is when that docks were still getting put in place. And then this is the next year. So you can see that all those slips have filled up with commercial fishing boats. So that it's like amazing to me how you can go from, how we could go from this in 86 to this in 87. It's pretty remarkable what happened there. Recreational boating and fishing. This is an area that I need to do a lot more research, but what I have right now is 2 projects that are outlined in the master plan, which is the fishing pier and boat launch ramp, which were both completed or almost completed before the master plan was completed. So just wanted to make it clear that the pier and the launch ramp happened before the master plan. The fact that few of the goals in the 1991 master plan have been achieved indicates an updated plan or new strategic plan is needed. And then this is a picture of the Princeton Boatyard, and I believe Yuri is in the audience today, and that's her house in the picture. So this is just a little bit of history about the boatyard. It was the only haul-out facility from Santa Cruz to Bodega Bay in 1972. From 1972 to 1996, it was privately operated, and 1997 to 2003, lease operation by Harbor District. 2003, lease expired. District voted 3-2 not to buy property and permanently closed the boatyard. 2004, Sally Campbell said, the board did not act in the best interest of the public when they twice failed to acquire a facility that is so vital to the commercial fishing and recreational boating or boaters at Pillar Point Harbor. And this slide was actually provided by the Mid-Coast Community Council, so I'm just using their slide. Perch Beach. There you are. So we've got boat launch ramp and boat trailer parking. The loss of habitat was mitigated by creation through excavation of a new mud flat habitat on site adjacent to the launch ramp access road, a new sandy beach habitat, let's see, where are we? Off West Shoreline area inside the outer breakwater. So the point here is that there were mitigations made when the boat launch ramp was installed, and those mitigations are still important today. Plans for dredging and sand replenishment are not noted or included in the 91 master plan. The 0.3-acre Perch Beach was created to compensate for the loss of sandy beach area when the parking area west of the administrative building was constructed. However, the perch nature of the beach has precluded establishment of a successful usable beach. Well, today, the Perch Beach is a successful revenue-producing area for launching kayaks, stand-up paddle boards, and other human-powered boats. Unfortunately, so much dredging sediment has been deposited on Perch Beach that it has now become somewhat compromised as a beach. Picnic tables are located on Perch Beach, and I believe those were also something Sally Campbell had wanted to include. This gets into a history of Perch Beach, which I'm not going to go through the blow by blow, but it's pretty interesting if you guys want to know more about how Perch Beach has changed over the years. And just an arrow pointing out where it was, or where it is in 1993, what it looked like, and then here we are today, and a notation about the protected wetland habitat, which is next to Perch Beach. which was part of the mitigation for the boat launch ramp. And then these are some pictures of past plans for Perch Beach. Perch Beach has really seen a lot of planning. 2007, this plan was put together. And this plan is from 2010. So you see we've got kind of a whole different configuration, lots of parking. And then this is something from 2011, cost estimate for Perch Beach bulkhead, and 6,850 off-site fill to 15 feet elevation, 3.1 million. Consulting design fees paid through January 2012, $300,000 roughly. Here's the bulkhead at Pillar Point Harbor. Despite moving planned multi-use building to parking lot B site, Harbor District still plans to build a bulkhead, fill, and pave Perch Beach. At least that's the current understanding. Again, that was a slide from the Mid-Coast Council.
Commissioner Brennan, could I ask you to wrap it up? We're really encroaching on public comment, and lunch is already out there. Can you bring it to a conclusion? Do you have recommendations that you want to list with us?
This is important to me to get through this. So
I'm sure it is,
as fast as I can.
but I don't hear any recommendations. All you're giving us is history of what's there, and we all know the history. And you're referencing Sally Campbell, God rest her soul, is not even here.
I would like to get through this, and I did make a recommendation at the very beginning, and I'll get to that again at the end. So there was a recommendation made at the beginning regarding the planning process.
Unless my colleagues overrule me, maybe 5 more minutes.
Okay, so we'll just get through what we can here. So this is about West Shoreline access. I'm going to kind of glaze through this part because you guys are probably pretty familiar with it. But that project, as it is today, was completed in November 1991. The West Shoreline section of the Pillar Point Harbor Master Plan predates the protected status of the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve and the area of special biologic significance and the critical coastal area program. Strategic plans should note the protected status of Harbor District property and the surrounding tidal areas. So this is a picture of what the marsh looked like in 1940, and this is 2011. It's still beautiful. This is just showing you where the location of the marsh is, and more information about needed improvements. The West Shoreline restroom facility, Portalet, gets a lot of use and is nicknamed the nastiest head on the coast. I didn't name it that, somebody else did. Isn't it time to provide better facility at this world-famous surf spot? The parking lot is in disrepair and should be surfaced with pervious paving. Improved drainage with pollution reduction features will help protect the FMR salt marsh and coastal waters. Hopefully grant funding will be found for these needed improvement projects. And I believe there is grant money out there for it. We just need to find it and make it a priority. This is a picture of what the entrance to the access is. You can see there's a lot of bollards, and then there's the bathroom facility there. And this is another picture of what the restroom facility currently looks like. And this is the parking lot. So I'm just going to kind of move ahead here. More information about West Shoreline. And this is important right now because we're talking about redoing this particular trail. So we need to think about what that means. Harbor development. Over the past 20 years, 1993 to 2013, the following 3 harbor district developments stand out: leasing the Pillar Point RV Park and discontinuing public access to Surfers Beach restroom, sale of all east of Highway 1 properties, excluding the El Granada lot next to the post office, the purchase of Romeo Pier within a couple years of foregoing the purchase of the boatyard property, both in the same comparable price range. What are those 2 properties worth today? That's just a point to consider. Time marches on. There's been one long succession of studies, planning, permitting of projects that were never built. The lot next to the El Granada post office was leased out long-term. Then the Harbor District paid to buy out the lease. What did that cost? Moving the Harbor District Administrative Office to more modest quarters is long overdue and would save the district money. The plans to sell the El Granada lot and build a new administrative building if parking lot B needs to be evaluated, this may not be the most effective option at this time. Why hasn't the Harbor District moved the administrative office to more modest quarters? It appears this move is long overdue. Why wait when lower cost commercial space is currently available on the coast side? Moving now would save the district money. And this is the El Granada Post Office lot, in case anybody doesn't know where that is or what that looks like. It's actually a really large lot, part of it's buildable. And then more on the administrative building, this is a kind of a history of what's gone on with that, and where we are today. And I'm going to skip over this one.
Okay, Commissioner, time marches on, as you point out. We've got to get moving on this. Let me.
So you don't want me to complete my presentation?
Well, if it's going on lengthy, no. I think we've given you adequate time. You're giving us a campaign speech here of things you want to do, and it's admirable. But we're here for a workshop to set priorities, and this is just speaking to Pillar Point Harbor, not speaking to Oyster Point at all, and not speaking to hardly anything else. I'm going to, unless the commission overrules me, I'm going to open it up to public comment now, public discussion.
Excuse me, I really need to make this comment in that I am a member of the public and I rearranged my work schedule to be here specifically for Sabrina's presentation. I know she's put in a lot of work. I need to know that all of you commissioners have heard this, because what she's addressing is what's important to me and to a lot of people. And so I know this is going on over time, that these are the issues that are critical. And if she gets cut off and is pushed to the brink of trying to read this so quickly to where not enough is going to be even understood or captured, I feel like it's doing a disservice to you, because we're only, members of the public are going to be right back in this room, right back here with you guys saying, but what about, what about, what about? And so perhaps this whole meeting needs to be set for another time at another place for a longer period of time where Sabrina can actually do a decent job of the presentation.
Thank you for your comments. Any further comments or questions?
Is this public comment?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, I really appreciate the information that every person has brought to the public here, the general manager, the harbor master, everyone, really appreciate it. Like the other commented over there, I want to see as much information as possible about the history of the master plan and strategic plan for this harbor as well as for Oyster Point. I'm very interested, and our other members of the public, in attending public meetings to educate ourselves about what is going on and also to help you. It's a disservice to everyone not to get as much information out to the public as possible. And the fact that this is poorly attended is because that people couldn't make it here, people had to work. And so this is just really another reason to go ahead and schedule some public outreach with other people.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Bill?
I'd like to agree with the previous two speakers as well. I think Sabrina's bringing up a lot of points that were raised at the previous meeting I did on October 3rd. I mentioned at the beginning that a lot of people can't be here, but they will be able to go back and watch the video. So rather than waste time right now on this, I think Sabrina needs another 5, maybe 10 minutes. And can we just let her get through with that? And maybe we can rush the questions later.
Sure. Merle, you had a comment?
I did. I think that this is really part of the process, and we can continue at other commission meetings as well as hopefully some specially scheduled public meetings. I'm happy to get, we already take a few minutes just to, especially supporters. I'm happy to give some of our public comment time, because I know we're going to have time. This is going to come up. The documents that we've seen are not complete. They're inadequate. And I need to give it Sabrina has.
Okay. Anything further? Yes, Lisa?
I echo with the public comments.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, let's do this then. Let's be innovative. Not that we're coining a new phrase, but let's break for lunch, and then Sabrina can keep going on her presentation, and we'll call this a working lunch. So we'll take a lunch break at this time, and you may certainly proceed with your presentation.